Whenever I first started in real estate, I would do these big, long emails, and it was so much detail. And that was probably actually doing a disservice to my clients because it was not the information that they needed right then.
You always want to make sure you're on the same page with who you're working with, because that can help get you to the next step and not get you into a muddy mess, which we find ourselves in sometimes.
My best strategy is just listen. Sit back, let the other side talk. I remember working in the oil field, and the first person to talk usually lost.
The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show that explores trending topics in real estate, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. We're a small team of professionals with over $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 successful transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. And today we're going to be talking about all things communication and how it can impact you in real estate, but just in life in general. But before I get to that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my right, Paul, Hammy the Rockberry, Aspen the Ninja Gruen, and the boss, Shannon Martin Martinez. My name is Ben, tongue-tied Lyons.
That's the best one yet.
Yeah.
It's the first true one.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Pennsylvania Dutch?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you say lollipop, I say polylop. Have you ever done that, Shannon?
I do that, yeah.
Yeah. All the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No?
No.
That's a head injury.
Yeah. It's like Fuddruckers. You say Rudd. Probably not the best example.
That's the kind of what I say.
But yeah, I mean, I get tongue tied all the time. I always switch the first letter of like the two words. So that's the Pennsylvania Dutch thing coming out. But anyways, let's get back on topic here. Communication.
But you're not Pennsylvania Dutch.
I know I'm not. I must be like a distant cousin or something.
You're coming up with weird stuff today.
I know. It's good.
This is not the first thing he said like this.
I'm on coffee. Coffee does
have some more
things. Yeah. Back to communication. It is a key component in your life, but in real estate as well. And it's one thing we want to talk about because I've noticed a lot lately that there's been miscommunications abound. Shannon, I mean, you're pretty direct with your communication with me. She's been zinging me all day, people.
Yeah.
But you know, let's look at this. I mean, with us living in the digital age and so much on text and email, is it really something to worry about? I mean, do you need to think about your tonality?
Probably now more than ever with digital age, yeah.
And why?
Well, because before when we communicate with someone, we would call them or be in front of them, and someone could read your, your cadence of how you're speaking, or they can, feel you have stress in your voice, things of that nature. But now when you're sending a text or you're sending an email, we're constantly doing digital back and forth, and you're not actually having that interpersonal communication with someone. It's very easy to not know. I mean, I just apologized to you this morning for sounding rude the other day on a text message because when I reread it, it sounded rude. And
I was at home crying.
I know it crushed you, and I felt bad because that wasn't my intent. I was just coming back with a question.
Yeah.
But I think now more than ever, it's very important to be more aware of that.
Yeah. And honestly, in that example, in my mind, I just give leeway like, oh, she didn't mean it like rude or anything. She was just asking a question. But a lot of people don't. And we communicate a lot on email and text. And I realized that a while back when I was just having a normal conversation with a seller on email, and come to find out, I talked with them later in person. They were super heated. And I didn't realize it.
Right.
I mean, I was just going back and forth, like I wouldn't say dry, but I was very matter of fact with how I was communicating just because I was busy and, we just needed to get this stuff through this section of the deal. And man, he was hot under the collar. And he felt like I wasn't taking into consideration his feelings or whatever else. And that's okay. It was just an eye-opening experience to me. Like, oh, I need to go back to being cognizant of, the person on the other end. The communication component is pretty important.
Do you guys watch Key and Peele?
On occasion.
They have a short about this where they are like texting each other back and forth. And one of them's like, oh, exclamation point. And the other's like, oh, okay. And so it's like, they're just like saying it out loud to each other, but it's a funny one.
I actually have seen that one. Yeah. And the one he's getting all hot and he's, texting back. And it was like, oh, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's it. That is, I mean, it reigns true with text messages and emails. I mean, have you found that to be the case, Aspen? Have you felt maybe the communication could have been better in certain instances?
Yeah, I think it also is matching like your client's communication style. I know if someone's a lot younger, they might be more okay with the quick little text or email. Anyone who has text or emails me knows I'm very direct and very short. I just don't like, I think whenever I first started in real estate, I would do these big long emails and it was so much detail. And that was probably actually doing a disservice to my clients a little bit because it was not the information that they needed right then versus like, this is what you need to focus on right now. And then later on, we'll focus on this. You still have those like intro ones under contract. Here's all your information. But for the most part, just sending sounds great is fine.
Yeah.
I think but if someone's constantly sending you really long ones, you probably need to respond with a little bit longer than you normally would.
You don't just thumbs up the comment?
Yeah, sometimes. That's my go-to exclamation point.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, you get the big long, 3 or 4 big long texts and you're like, thumbs up.
Or
awesome.
K. Or
yeah.
K.
Yeah, okay.
When someone says okay, I'm like, okay. I just think okay is rude.
Yeah.
And like K is fine, K period, not fine. I'm like, oh, okay.
I need to take notes.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Right? Because that doesn't even register for me at all.
That's just a me thing, I think.
My wife and daughter are always, because my daughter is the worst at texting. She only texts back one word or okay.
I always say texting my teenager is like texting a boy who doesn't like me because I'm just not getting anything from that conversation.
Yep. Right.
At least I'm not alone in that.
Yeah. Well, and that's that is why we're talking about communication, because there's different generations. And every generation, like my generation and older, tend to pick up the phone.
See, he says, and older, and like, and points
it was,
to you.
I was not. That was
you were
like
totally doing that. My generation and your generation
and older. Wouldn't you say though, Shannon? I mean, like our generation and older, like they want to talk on the phone.
They do.
They don't want. I mean, I don't.
They do more frequently, than younger people.
They still leave voicemails.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Paul Berry, a partner at the Lyons Group. We're dedicated to making your real estate experience the best it can be. If you're looking to buy or sell, go to sjcbroker.com and watch our informational video series. These videos break down the process of buying and selling. While you're there, schedule a private consultation with one of our partners. We'd love to sit down and talk strategy and give you a real advantage in today's market. You deserve the best, so take those steps, and we'll see you soon. Now back to the show.
So I'm on a lot of other committees and do some other stuff, and I found that the older generation, not you.
That's right.
The older generation likes to do long passive-aggressive emails. Like, have you seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's more the older generation, because I think the younger generation, when there's a conflict, either get on the phone or you see them in person. But I've noticed recently these very long, thought-out, passive-aggressive emails that start a whole bunch of drama.
Maybe I'm just a really good communicator because I haven't had any of these problems.
Well, I haven't been the writer of them, but I've been getting them.
But I can see that because, our generation and a little bit older, they want to get all their points in. Like, if I'm going to put this out, I'm going to hit you here, 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 and here.
And they do like a crap sandwich too. Like, I respect everybody, but you suck.
Yeah.
Back to respect.
Back to respect.
I definitely do the crap sandwich.
Yeah.
Compliment. Insult. And then compliment, be like, but we can work together to get this done.
Yeah.
I do that.
But then you were saying the younger generation just wants to get on the phone. Well, I think there's a delineation there. Maybe not the youngest generation, but maybe our generation and maybe one younger.
I think it's the vehicle of the complaint or whatever that is. I mean, I've seen the older generation does the long drawn out stuff. The younger ones will do the quick texting or just pick up the phone, because I think people want to do it in letter form. I think the older generation wants to do it like, I mail you a letter and then you got to mail a letter back.
You got to mail it back.
And that's what email is used for.
I had a client that was a lot younger than me and I had to learn how to use voice notes because she only wanted to talk in voice notes and I had no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
So I had to figure it out.
Snapchat.
Oh, I don't have Snapchat.
But don't voice notes go away after you listen to them?
I have no idea.
No,
I think that's Snapchat.
Some of them do. Some voice notes do, but not all of them. I don't know why. I know mine don't because probably I don't have it set up that way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've noticed that when I listen to a voice note, it typically goes away. Maybe it's the settings, but the reason I ask that is because I like to have kind of a record so I could go back and see. But then I was thinking just now, like, we didn't have a record when Sherry was like, we need to sit down. And we talked over the desk and she told me, how the cow ate the cabbage. And Sherry, by the way, is Nate Duckett's mother, who taught me most everything I know in real estate. But anyways, there was no record of that. I didn't send her an email after the fact to say just a summation
to follow up our meeting we just had.
I do that.
We didn't do that.
I do that all the time.
And I appreciate that, but I was just thinking
didn't do that.
We didn't do that back then. I was like, it was done. It was said, and you got punched in the throat, and you were good. You walked away, a few tears in your eye, and
you learned your lesson.
I
think it also depends, like if there's going to be something happening afterwards, or if it's just like, okay, now it's done. And we can move on, then it's probably just done and you can just move on. But if it's like, okay, this is what I understood from the conversation. This is what we discussed. This is the information you need to know. I want to make sure it's all clearly laid out. Then I put it in an email. But if it's just you're disagreeing and then it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think content can drive how we should communicate. If it's something extremely important, then you definitely want to pick up a phone and make a call and talk directly to somebody and maybe talk a few things out and go through some motions. And then afterwards, maybe follow up with with that email. I think that kind of stuff is really important. You don't have to do that with every single thing that you do with communication with people, but we definitely have those in our day-to-day work where, it warrants taking a little time. I need to wait till I finish the showing or whatever I'm in the middle of and sit down quietly and have a good conversation and let them, fully understand what I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm. And not even disagreements. Sometimes it's just you all want to be on the same page.
Yeah. Not even about a disagreement. Maybe you've just found out something that's extremely important to their transaction, whether it's your customer or whether it's a lender or whether it's the other broker or someone, it deserves more communication than just a quick text. Hey, just to let you know, your deal just died.
Phone call.
Exactly. You don't text that.
Whenever other realtors text me that their people are terminating, I'm like, how about you pick up the phone and call so we can get some more information.
Read the room. Understand where the level of communication should be.
But just being like, the inspector is going to be a little bit late. Sure. A quick text.
Yeah. I would prefer to get a text. I don't want to stop my day or interrupt, what I'm in the middle of to answer a phone call for something that trivial.
Yeah, because you get some people that will call and call and call.
For everything.
And then it's just like, okay, well, what was pressing? What was needed? Oh, I was just going to tell you the inspector's going to be late.
Right.
Okay. Well, that, read the room.
I could have noticed that and gone on and continued what I was doing.
Yeah. So I was at my son's or my daughter's, I don't remember, soccer game. And I got like a bunch of texts from a realtor, and it was about terminating a deal. So I was more ticked that she was texting me the termination. I missed half the game because I called her up and yelled at her, do not text me a termination. Have the common decency to call me, tell me why, see if we can work through it, all those types of things. And I ended up missing the game anyway.
Yeah. I think it's easier. We find it easier to deliver bad news maybe to another broker than to a customer. Like I can more easily text you, oh, hey, this happened. We can talk about it in a few minutes or something. Whereas I would never do that to a client that were in that position, because clients, that's big news and they want immediate gratification. I want to know why. I want to know when. I want to, they want details. They want to discuss it. They may just want to get mad for a minute, whatever that is, but they want that. Yeah. And I think it is easier for us as realtors to show back and forth information, even if it's bad information, it's easier to do. But know your audience, when it's your customer, that's the top priority, most important person. They don't get that kind of news every day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's going into being just kind of thoughtful. I think communication comes down to being thoughtful about who you are speaking with or what the communication is. And for instance, oftentimes I'll send a text message in a way that the other realtor can copy and paste. And so they can see that it comes from the listing realtor, and this is what the listing realtor is saying. And that way it's just communicated right on. There's no need for modifying it or whatever else, but that's being thoughtful.
Sanitizing it, because sometimes you have to sanitize what someone has told you before you say it
Take
to the
all
next
the angry
person.
faces out.
Right,
And,
yeah.
Well, I do like that you do that, because sometimes I just go, this is from the seller, and copy paste. But I'll be honest, I prefer texting over almost anything else, because it's easy and I can do it when I can do it while we're talking.
Yeah.
I don't have to go in. But you were saying that a termination needs to be a call, and I was just thinking about a customer I have right now. They do not like to be called. They do not like email. Everything's through text, because they're faster. You get a better response through text. So at the beginning of every relationship with a client, I always say, how do you want to be contacted?
Yeah.
How do you want to communicate?
That's the art of communication, is understanding your audience, is understanding how I'm going to maybe talk to you throughout the day could be very different from how I'm going to talk to you throughout the day and to you throughout the day, and then my customer or my mother, I'm going to treat each person differently. And that's the art of it, is knowing who you're communicating with and what do they need more than anything.
Yeah.
One thing I do like about text is I try and be really mindful about including both partners if there's multiple people that own the house. Because I think sometimes one person becomes the default and then the other person's not getting all the information maybe as clearly as the first person is. So I do prefer text for general communication if there's more than one buyer or seller.
I agree.
Great point. I mean, and I've been doing that a lot lately for the last few years. It's like, hey, give me your text. We're going to set up a text string so we're all on the same page. And that way, no one has, well, I should say this, the likelihood of people not being on the same page is a lot lower. It kind of goes back to what, we're working on an investment property right now, and there's so many different moving parts. Like, we'll have conversations and then we'll walk away and, the next day it's like, oh, what were some of those facets? And that's where, like, the follow-up email, when we have a conversation, Aspen's fantastic at this. You'll send a summation email and say, just so we're on the same page, boom, 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 boom. But those text strings act in the same manner. It's like, just so we're all on the same page. I know we discussed this, but I just want to make sure we're clear. I'm going to call and do X, Y, Z, and you are expecting me to do that. And so it's just a good way to do it. But it's also about meeting the client at their level, right? For that client, you would text them that the deal is terminating, or you would call them?
I have a few times already.
Have you? So you've made their laps, huh?
Yeah, I've done. They're investors. So we've done a lot of investment properties, and one takes the lead on most things. The other one kind of just catches up after a while, but I do have them all on the same text thread. They're all copied on the emails and everything, but they communicate everything through text. I said, hey, just got to let you know this deal terminated. But they're not the type of people to get on a call and say why. They go, well, that sucks. Let's get it back online.
Right. They're investments. They're investors. They're business minded. This is a transaction to them.
Now, if it's a first time home buyer, I'm going to get on the phone, talk through. I like to get people in person, because there's a lot of times I should have asked that after you're off the phone. But if you're sitting down, like, I'm going to invest a half hour to an hour, and let's get everything out in the open right now, answer all the questions. So I even go to in person with a lot of my clients.
I think phone calls are just so much faster too, especially if you have a lot to go over. Like, and then you have questions and the emails back and forth, and it takes a while to type it out. And then you should have just called and got the general information and then typed it out. Yeah. If you needed to, like, summarize it afterwards.
I have a funny story. My sister, who's much younger than me, this was probably 20 years ago, when everybody had the T9, she had her phone back like this, and she was arguing with somebody over text, and she was getting mad, and my dad was asking, what's the problem? She's like, she just won't understand what I'm saying. I wish she would just understand. My dad's like, that's a phone. Pick it up. Yeah. If one, so I remember that all the time, because if one style of communication isn't working, you've got to use something different.
Yeah, because I'll find maybe I'll text somebody and say, oh, hey, we're going to, have this next Tuesday. Well, why are they doing that? Well, it's in the contract. It's their right. Well, I don't understand why they need it. Pretty soon you go, okay, you know what? I need to call and we need to have something a little bit deeper. Like they're understand when you need to maybe change direction with
Pivot
somebody.
That a little bit. Yeah. And sometimes to me, it makes sense in my brain. And I, give them a big long text and all the context and everything in between. But when I send it to them, they may be on a totally different wavelength and thinking about other things. And then I reread my text. I'm like, oh, I can see why they were. I do that to you quite a bit, Shannon. I'm like, hey, by the way, this, and you're like, what deal are we even talking about?
Right. Yeah.
What do you mean? Yeah. Oh, so you're not in my brain thinking about these things right now? I mean, you should be. You should be.
Right.
Yeah. So what about the listening component? Because I think we have to go back to some of the basics. Communication isn't just about you talking, you communicating. It's about receiving the communication. What are your thoughts on that, and how important is the listening side of things?
Listening is probably more important than your delivery for a lot of people, especially in our business, because we're used to being in the driver's seat. We tell people how things are going to be done, what's going to happen next, what somebody's thinking, where things are going. But sometimes we don't always stop and really listen to what they're needing.
And sometimes you assume you know what they're going to say. Like you're already finishing their sentences before they finish.
Your mother-in-law.
Yeah, my mother-in-law. I love my mother-in-law.
And my mother-in-law.
And she does that, though. She'll before you're finished, because she just thinks fast and she talks fast and her mind's going. So she thinks she knows what you're going to, and oftentimes, to her credit, she's spot on. But then there's many times that John, my father-in-law goes, okay, now, are you going to tell the story? Or are you going to let me tell the story? Because I'm going a different route with this than you are. And so she has to stop herself and slow down. But I think that's a big thing is don't assume you know what someone else is thinking, even though they're kind of tracking that. It may not end up that way.
I used to be really bad about that. And I'm still like that with my friends. I think I'm okay in work. I'll listen all day long, but I grew up in a house with 5 sisters.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We talk over each other and we are having 3 conversations at the same time. Yeah. And whenever sometimes I'm in a meeting and people are just like going on and on, I'm like, we got to get this moving. Like I like it a little bit quicker, but I've become a very good listener.
Yeah.
It is amazing though, how much if you let someone talk, especially your customers, if you let them talk, how much you can draw out of them, how much you can learn about them. And the more we know about them and we know maybe what their past experiences are or how they're feeling about something or just little nuances in their life, when you're really listening to that, you can serve them better. We become better with what we do when we really fully understand how they feel in things.
Yep.
When I think in negotiations, that's my best strategy is just listen. Sit back, let the other side talk, and they usually talk themselves either into or out of whatever they were trying to get. Mm-hmm. I remember working in the oil field. I was working with a company up in Utah, and it was more of a cultural thing, but the first person to talk usually lost. So I got really good at just sitting there and
staring at each other,
and but that's a form of communication too, and listening can be a superpower, in some instances. And I think listening to all sides of everybody in the room, like especially if you have divorced couples or if you have a large family and everybody has input, you have to listen to everybody's input and then try to figure out what happens. And I think you listen to the self-help books or tapes, they always talk about active listening. And they never really talk about the next step is what do you do with all that active listening? I think making the plan or coming up with a good strategy is the next part.
Yeah, and you have to be okay, especially in negotiations with like a long, awkward silence. And especially in that scenario, I could just picture you and another oil and gas guy staring across the table at each other like, this is weird. Like, who's going to talk first?
It's not going to be me.
Yeah.
I don't have to win, but I'm not losing.
One of my closest friends, we started hanging out like 13 years ago, and we went to lunch, and we didn't know each other at all. And we both just were kind of okay with being silent. I don't mind a silence, and apparently she didn't either. And my husband was like, well, what'd you guys talk about? I'm like, not much. He's like, no, but like you were there for an hour. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. We didn't chat much. And then we were like, we'd just kind of be around each other. Like we'd go get pedicures together or we'd watch a movie and we just kind of be together. And then one day she had came over and got real tipsy at my house and chatterbox. And Bryson was like, where did this come from? Because she was just so quiet for so many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bryson's the chatterbox in your family, isn't
Yeah.
he?
Bryson just likes to say things to see what sticks. He just kind of, I think he kind of just likes the wow factor. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, he just thinks he's funny and he's joking all the time, but
Yeah.
you can't tell he's joking. Well, I can tell he's joking,
Sure.
but people are like, is he serious? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
he's not being serious. And he's just over there giggling. But
I love it.
Bryson's a very good communicator.
Yeah.
And he never shies away from a hard or uncomfortable conversation, which is nice.
That is a nice thing because those are inevitable, you know, hard and uncomfortable conversations, and you have to be able to have those and move through them. So, well, we're winding down, but we want to get to the speed round. Shannon, boss, coming to you. What is the most important aspect of communication and why?
I don't know. There's so many important things. I would say listening is probably the most important. You can learn everything that you need to know if you really truly listen to someone.
That's a great answer. My father-in-law says, Mary Elizabeth, they gave you 2 of these and 1 of these for a reason. And he always has to remind her, but she fires back. She's always hammering him too. Aspen.
I was going to say listening is probably the most important, just because that's where you can find out if you weren't communicating clearly, like if they understood it differently, or where they're coming from, or their side, or how they felt, or whatever it might be. I think listening is where you find the clarity in the conversation.
Yep, well said. Paul Berry, you got the rock.
Listening. I was trying to think of something different, but I think we talked so long about the other stuff. Listening is definitely the most important.
Yeah, it's funny because that kind of came at the end of the conversation, but it is probably the most important thing. I'm going to round it out myself. I mean, what were you going to say something?
Well, I was just thinking of a phrase that came out in that leadership training I had is seek to understand. So it comes in with listening, but listen to, understand what the other side is doing, not just listening to make sure that you've heard everything, but, understand what the other side is trying to get.
Not listening to respond.
Yes. Yeah. Listening to understand.
Yeah. That actually takes some work because your initial response is, I'm going to respond. I'm listening to respond, but you're seeking to understand. When you're in that mode, then you're really truly trying to understand what that person is saying. They may be heated, they may be soft-spoken, doesn't matter. What are they truly trying to say? And that's an important part of communication. So I would agree. I think all 4 of us on the same page, the number one skill you need to have and develop as a good communicator is the ability to listen and seek to understand what the person you're communicating with is saying so you can respond appropriately. Then you can go down to list number 2, 3, 4 things of priority, not shouting and stomping your feet and all that. But fascinating discussion. I think it would help people out in their lives in general to really hone in the art of communication. And then also specifically in real estate, if you're a realtor or a client, a buyer or a seller, communication is key. You always want to make sure you're on the same page with who you're working with, because that can help get you to the next step and not get you into a muddy mess, which we find ourselves in sometimes. So thank you for the great discussion, partners. And thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. If you like our content, please like and subscribe. And of course, you can go to sjcbroker.com and schedule a private consultation with any one of the team members here, any one of the partners here. We'd love to sit down with you and give you the insight in today's market and help you get an advantage whether you're buying or selling. So thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed and check the show notes below for direct links to our buyer and seller video series. The buyer and seller video series can give you an inside track on taking the right steps in real estate. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group or to schedule a consultation, go to sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.